Hi, my name is Beth Justino, and I am a writer, developmental editor, and publishing coach, which means that I work with writers in both fiction and nonfiction, helping them tell a better story and getting from the place of first draft to final book. Most of what I do falls under the category of developmental editing, which means that I am working with writers who have a draft of a manuscript and need the big picture feedback on how that's working. Are the pieces coming together? Does the story flow? Are there any logical or structural areas that need attention? That's going to be what these classes are about. I have been an independent publishing consultant and editor for the last 14 years. I probably edit 15 to 30 manuscripts a year, 15 to 30 different books a year. Before that, I was actually a literary agent, which meant that my first step into publishing was to be that person who read all of the slush pile entries and query letters and outlines and early manuscripts and had the experience of evaluating whether things were fitting into the market, how they fit, what the strengths of the writing was. And so I brought those skills into my experience as an editor and really have leaned into being a big picture editor. And so that's one of the reasons that this class leans so heavily into the specific tools that I use in my everyday. Because the reality is that agents and publishers and readers have a lot of options right now. And so one of the reasons that self-editing now is so important is that you're taking this work out into the world in a competitive environment where readers aren't looking for something that's good, they're looking for something that's great. So I want to help writers, and one of the things I love to do across the board is to help writers find the potential and the deep creative inspiration that makes this story unique, and make that so obvious that a reader can't put it down. So as a writer, you have spent months, maybe years, developing the story that is now on the page. But there's an entire second step of that process, which is reviewing and revising, being able to step back and look at your own words the way that a reader would. Because a reader doesn't have all of the information that's in your mind and in your imagination, in your experience. And so self-editing as a term is just the process of having a clear set of guidelines to be able to look at your work as a whole from an outsider's perspective. And that's really hard. It's hard to look at your own writing and know, what isn't there. And so the process of self-editing as a class is the process of giving you specific tools, specific exercises, specific questions that a developmental editor, a professional editor like myself, or someone at a publishing house or a literary agent would be looking at in this manuscript to see how it's working, what needs work. How do you look at, does the story flow from beginning to end? Does it have a clear conflict? Does it have a clear question? Are things happening all the way through? And so the process of self-editing is looking at everything from the big picture of your work as a whole to the details, to the how are specific sentences structured in ways that evoke certain emotions from the readers. We have 6 months to really dive in. And I hope that people who are in the class, students in the class, are ready to really put in time and effort through each one of the 6 lessons that we lined up. And because each lesson is going to give you a different way to review your work. And at the end of it, I want every person in the class to have a clear picture of what their story is about, be able to clearly identify what the narrative plot is, who the characters are, why they matter, what sets them apart and makes them interesting, what's at stake for them, and how do we see that clearly happening throughout. So one of the things you should know about me is that I am also a writer. I have written a memoir that was published in 2018. I've written drafts of novels that are sitting in drawers. I've gone through that process of spending the time to create those first drafts. And one of the things I know, and I suspect that you know as well, is that it's really hard and sometimes kind of boring to go back and try to review your own work, to try to put yourself in that place where you're seeing it for the first time. So one of the reasons why this class is such a good opportunity is that it gives you an extended time to not just sit alone with your manuscript, but to work with your manuscript as part of a community, to get feedback from a professional like me, but also from other writers, and hear from them the different kinds of questions that they're asking that are going to raise new questions for you. There's also going to be a little bit of accountability in part of it. You can say, I'm going to edit my novel, I'm going to edit my memoir as part of my New Year's resolution. But what we're offering is the chance to give you very specific deadlines all the way through, and a certain sense of knowing that you are doing this as part of a group, as that sense of accountability. The last time I taught this class, I had one of the students who came into the class had a finished manuscript that she had been submitting, that she had sent out to agents and publishers. They were asking to read the full manuscript, but then at the end, she kept getting no thank yous. And the feedback that she would get was, the pacing doesn't feel right. I'm not really engaging with the characters. I'm not exactly sure what's happening here. It's a great idea, but it's just not grabbing my interest, is the phrase that she came into the class with, going, well, what do I do with that? And over the course of the 6 sessions, we went through exercises and questions, and she reviewed it in different ways. And she had the chance to interact with the other students in the class and brainstorm some ideas. And I shared some ideas. And at the end of it, she had a really clear picture of the reasons that it wasn't necessarily engaging was, there were things that could be fixed. There were long sections of conversation and dialogue that reviewed what had already happened without adding anything new. She did the work. She worked really hard through the class. She did revisions. And when she resubmitted that work to a publisher that had said, thanks, but no thanks, this time around, they said yes and offered her a contract. And so that book will be out this year. And that's the power of self-editing. How do you know that you're ready for this class? The first thing is, have you finished your draft? Have you gotten through the end? Or sometimes it's really hard to know where the end is. So I'm gonna even say, have you gotten so close that you can see the end? That you have 90% of the manuscript, even if you don't know how it's going to end yet. You have enough of the work written down that you can go through the exercises and the discussions and the conversations and the practice that we're going to do over those 6 months. And so do you have enough of a story that you can describe it? Do you have enough of the characters that you can evaluate them and see how they're going? It doesn't necessarily need to be a manuscript that you've reviewed many, many times. That's what we're here for. Self-editing is here for helping you evaluate anything from a first draft to something that you've been struggling to revise and don't know how to do. If you're not sure if you're ready, if you're not sure if your work is ready, one of the things to consider is that you will be in a room where everyone in that room is also bringing their early draft. And one of the places that writers thrive and learn and grow is when they're willing to both listen and share their work with other writers who are in similar paths and journeys. I want to be in a room with writers who are listening to each other and learning from each other and sharing with each other. I don't want to come into this as I'm going to tell you what to do. This is self-editing. I'm not going to tell you what to do to your manuscript. I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to maybe make some suggestions. You are free to share or not share as much as you want to within the context of this community and this group. And the support and encouragement that you get from other writers who are doing the same thing is part of the experience that will make you see your work in a different way. So what can you specifically expect from a class about self-editing a novel? We've broken this up into 6 sections, and each month we're going to talk about and evaluate a different area of what it takes to make a great story. We're gonna start with looking at the big picture. Can you clearly articulate what your plot is? And by that I mean both what is the conflict that opens it up and how does that resolve at the end? And what are the specific action points along the way that get you there? We're gonna talk specifically about characters. Are your characters realistic? Are they consistent? Can I see what each one of them wants and desires and is trying to do? And that's especially important if you have an antagonist. If you have a villain, we're really gonna dig into making sure that that person, as well as your protagonist, has their own purpose and has a level of complexity. We're gonna talk about narrative voice. Who's telling your novel? What are the points of view that come through? And that's an insider term that you may or may not have heard before, but it's really important because it's whose head, whose perspective is the story being told through. We're gonna talk about pacing. We're gonna talk about how to keep things moving within your novel so that you can elicit certain emotional reactions from your reader. We're gonna talk about how scene by scene, we look at how things are escalating or resolving. And then we're gonna talk about what happens when you just take out the red pencil. Line editing and copy editing. How do you look at it from a sentence by sentence position to make sure every word is not only accurate and correct, but is also really helping to build your story? I'm gonna teach you how to do everything from build a synopsis and an outline of your book to a style sheet to make sure that your character's eye color is consistent all the way through. So what can you expect from a class on how to self-edit your memoir? After all, this is your own story. Well, in the course of those 6 months, we're going to look at 6 very different aspects of what it means to tell your own story. Starting with, do you know specifically which part of your life this particular book is going to do? What is the story of the memoir and where does it begin and end, especially in the context of your own life? We're gonna look at your narrative voice. Are you telling this story from the perspective of who you are right now or who you were then? And how does that change over time? We're gonna talk about how to write honestly and with compassion about real people, your friends and your foes and your family. How do you put them on a page in a way that captures the truth of your experience and also the depth of your relationship and also doesn't get you sued? We're gonna talk about how to look at the storytelling aspects of it. What is the pace of this story? You know, there are a lot of pieces of real life that maybe don't need to be in the memoir itself. What is every scene adding to the book that you are eventually writing, and how does a reader perceive that progression? And we're gonna talk about the nitty-gritty details of writing, line editing and copy editing. How do you make sure that every word is accurate and is leading somewhere and isn't a distraction? So are there things that are surprises? Most often when I'm working with writers, the thing that I hear most when they come back is, I thought that editing was going to be boring. I didn't think that there was going to be a value to stepping back and creating an outline and looking specifically at the action, or writing character sketches, or rewriting dialogue from another perspective. I thought that all of the work went into the manuscript itself. And what surprises people often is how, when they step away from the words on the page and how easy it is to get distracted by, oh, I want to rewrite this paragraph, or I want to change this sentence. But you look at the whole picture, how different they can see their own work and how much more clearly they can see their own work. So I'm Beth Justino, and I'm really looking forward to meeting you in these self-editing classes. They're an affordable, community-based, realistic way to take you through a 6-month journey. And at the end, you'll have a completed manuscript that you can feel good about sending out into the world.